The courtroom was oppressively silent as 5-year-old Lily Thompson entered through the heavy oak doors, her small hand tightly gripping the leash of Max, a stoic German shepherd with a deep, jagged scar running along his left side. Every eye in the room followed the little girl as she made her way toward the witness stand. Her steps were hesitant, but there was a quiet determination in them. Judge Andrew Bennett, a veteran jurist with more than 3 decades of legal experience, leaned forward slightly from his bench. His discerning gaze followed Lily's every move, acutely aware that the outcome of this trial might hinge entirely on her. Lily was the sole witness to an attempted kidnapping, a case that, if successfully prosecuted, could put a dangerous predator behind bars for life. But there was a monumental problem. Lily hadn't spoken a single word since the incident. Across the courtroom, seated at the defense table, was Douglas Kane. He was a 47-year-old software engineer with a disarming smile and an ordinary face, the kind you might pass on the street without a second glance. But to those gathered here, he was accused of a heinous crime. An eyewitness had placed him at the scene of Lily's attempted abduction, yet Kane's defense was airtight. No DNA, no fingerprints, and most damningly, the only witness couldn't or wouldn't testify. His lawyer, Victor Lang, had built his defense on discrediting the traumatized child's ability to accurately identify anyone. But then something happened, something no one could have anticipated. As Lily settled into the high-backed wooden chair at the witness stand, her emerald green eyes flickered toward Kane. Her tiny fingers, still trembling, made an almost imperceptible gesture. It was a subtle signal, one painstakingly taught over weeks of therapy. Only 2 beings in the courtroom caught it, Max and Judge Bennett. Max's reaction was immediate. The moment Lily's fingers twitched in that silent plea for help, the dog's entire body went rigid. His ears pricked forward, his muscles coiled like a loaded spring. A low, primal growl rumbled from deep within his chest, a sound that made the hair on the back of every neck in the room stand on end. His amber eyes locked onto Douglas Kane, unwavering, piercing. Recognition. Warning. A ripple of unease spread through the courtroom. Murmurs erupted from the gallery. Whispers of speculation grew louder, fueled by the undeniable sense that this was more than the reaction of a trained therapy dog responding to his handler's distress. This was something deeper, something ancient and instinctual. Judge Bennett's gavel slammed down hard on the bench, the sharp crack echoing through the hushed courtroom like a thunderclap. "This court will recess for 15 minutes, he declared, his tone uncharacteristically urgent. Assistant District Attorney Rachel Marin shot him a questioning look as she gathered her files, but Bennett avoided her gaze. Instead, he focused on Lily, who now clung to Max like a life preserver in a stormy sea. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Judge Bennett remained seated, his mind racing. In all his years on the bench, he had never seen a therapy dog react with such certainty. What had Max recognized? And what did that recognition mean for the trial? Outside the courtroom. In the hallway just outside the courtroom, Lily knelt beside Max, her tiny hands gripping the dog's thick fur. Her mother, Angela Thompson, bent down beside her, brushing Lily's curls away from her pale face with shaking fingers. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Angela whispered, her voice tight with worry. Lily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her grip on Max tightened, her small frame pressing into his warm side. Nearby, Special Agent Tom Delgado observed the scene closely. Delgado was a veteran of the FBI's Child Abduction and Exploitation Task Force, his salt and pepper hair and weathered features a testament to decades of experience. His instincts had saved more lives than he cared to count, and they were screaming at him now. "That dog just confirmed something," Delgado murmured as he stepped closer to Judge Bennett. "I'd bet my badge he recognizes Kane." Judge Bennett exhaled slowly, his sharp blue eyes narrowing. "Then we need to find out where from." Meanwhile, in the defense room, behind closed doors, Douglas Kane sat across from Victor Lang in the defense consultation room. The moment they were alone, the smug confidence on Kane's face shifted into something colder, darker. His fingers drummed against the tabletop in an uneven rhythm as he replayed the moment over and over in his mind. "She knows," Kane muttered under his breath, his jaw clenched tight. Lang raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" Kane quickly forced a small, practiced smile. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Not anymore. That damn dog was a problem he hadn't accounted for. And now he was beginning to understand that Max might very well be the key to unraveling his entire plan. Before the silence, before the abduction attempt, before the silence that stole her voice, Lily Thompson had been a chatterbox. At 5 years old, she was a whirlwind of energy, a constant stream of questions, stories, and giggles. Her bright green eyes shimmered with curiosity. She loved bedtime tales, stuffed animals, and the silly voices her mom used when reading to her. Then one warm spring afternoon, everything changed. Angela had been watching Lily from the kitchen window as she played in the yard, spinning in circles, her yellow sundress flaring like a flower in bloom. The sun was shining, birds were singing. It was an ordinary day. At 3:37 p.m., Angela's phone rang. It was her sister calling from Florida. She stepped inside for what she thought would be a quick chat. For minutes. That's all it took. When Angela returned, the gate at the side of the house was ajar. Her stomach turned cold. Her eyes darted around, searching for her daughter, and there she was, still in the yard. But she wasn't alone. A black van idled by the curb, its side door partially open. A man crouched beside Lily, his voice smooth, his smile practiced. "I've got puppies in my van," he was saying. "Special ones. They need a little girl to take care of them. Would you like to see?" Angela's heart nearly stopped. Her instincts took over before her mind could catch up. "Lily," she screamed. The man's head snapped up, his expression shifting from warm to something hard, calculating. In an instant, his hand clamped around Lily's arm. Lily froze. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Fear paralyzed her. Across the street, 70-year-old neighbor Carol Jennings was walking her beagle when she saw what was happening. "Hey," she shouted. "Get away from that child." The man hesitated. His grip loosened just for a second. It was all Lily needed. She yanked her arm free and ran straight into her mother's arms. Angela scooped her up just as the van peeled away, tires screaming, leaving black skid marks on the pavement. Lily buried her face in her mother's shoulder, trembling. Silent. The investigation begins. Special Agent Delgado was called to the scene within the hour. He took one look at Lily's wide, vacant eyes and knew. He'd seen it too many times before. "She's shut down," Delgado said quietly to Angela. "Selective mutism. It's a trauma response." Angela clutched Lily tighter, her eyes filling with tears. Delgado and his partner, Agent Maria Chun, canvassed the area. Carol Jennings provided a partial license plate. YGX. It wasn't much, but it was something. The days that followed were harder than Angela and her husband, David, could have imagined. Lily stopped playing. She stopped drawing. She wouldn't leave the house. And she didn't speak. Not one word. Then, after a desperate conversation with a therapist, Angela found herself at the office of Dr. Emily Rhodes, a specialist in animal-assisted therapy. And that's where Lily met Max. Max's story. Max had once been one of the best canine officers in the Metro Police Department. He had taken down suspects, sniffed out explosives, and protected his handler with unwavering loyalty. 3 years ago, he was injured during a raid to rescue a kidnapped child. A deep knife wound nearly ended his life, and ended his career. He had been deemed unfit for duty, scheduled for euthanasia. Until Dr. Rhodes intervened. She adopted Max, believing that his strength, instincts, and loyalty could still serve a purpose. And she was right. The first time Lily laid eyes on Max, something shifted. She didn't run. She didn't hide. And when Dr. Rhodes asked if she wanted to pet him, Lily stepped forward. Slowly, hesitantly, but deliberately. Her small fingers brushed Max's scar, and something unspoken passed between them. Back to the trial. The trial resumed after the recess, but the energy in the courtroom had changed. Judge Bennett's intuition told him they were standing on the brink of a revelation. During her testimony, Lily didn't speak. But when asked to identify the man who had tried to take her, she pointed directly at Douglas Kane. Kane's jaw clenched. Max, lying quietly at her side, lifted his head and let out a low, warning growl. His focus sharpened like a blade. Judge Bennett took note. "Has this dog had any prior contact with the defendant?" he asked. ADA Marin shook her head. "Not to our knowledge." Judge Bennett turned his gaze to Kane. "Mr. Kane." Kane remained silent, but sweat glistened on his temple. The final breakthrough. A break came in the form of new forensic evidence. Soil samples from Kane's van matched those from a remote cabin in the northern woods. Delgado and his team moved fast. With Max leading the way, they found the cabin and what lay beneath its floorboards. A basement, chains, and an 8-year-old girl named Sophie Martin, missing for 6 months but alive. DNA evidence linked Kane to the scene. Sophie's testimony sealed the case. The verdict. Back in the courtroom, with irrefutable evidence on the table, Douglas Kane's facade finally crumbled. "I want to change my plea," he said quietly. The courtroom erupted. Kane was sentenced to life without parole. The epilogue. In the days after the sentencing, Lily spoke again. Holding Max's scarred face between her hands, she whispered, "Thank you." Her parents wept. Max's tail wagged. And Judge Bennett, watching from afar, knew they had all witnessed something extraordinary. Sometimes heroes come in unexpected forms. Sometimes they have 4 legs and a heart big enough to carry the weight of another's pain. And sometimes the courage to stand against darkness comes from the smallest hands and the quietest voices.